Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Elevating Everyone, Unifying EX and CX for Better Business Performance. During this webinar, we will hear from world-class speaker and CX expert, Jeannie Walters. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing post-event. Please submit any questions in the Q&A section on the right side of your screen. You may also send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion of the event. If you encounter any technical issues, please submit your question in the Q&A or chat, and our team will help you troubleshoot. We've included several helpful resources here to enhance your experience and provide more insight into BetterWorks, Jeannie, and our upcoming events. You can find those in the doc tabs of the platform. You'll also be receiving our feedback survey. If you could take a moment to complete the survey before leaving the platform, we'd greatly appreciate it, as this helps us shape future webinars. Last but not least, during today's webinar, please visit the Q&A tab or comment in the chat. We love to engage with you, and we'll be monitoring both and pulling from them during our question and answer portion. Now, please help me welcome Ashley Litzenberger, Senior Director of Product Marketing at BetterWorks.
Thank you, Alex, and welcome everybody. It's great to see you all here today. I've been looking through the chat, and there's just folks from all over, from South Africa, from South Carolina. Jumping in, whether you're a seasoned People Fundamentals attendee through webinars such as the one today, or you've discovered us through our popular LinkedIn newsletter or our podcast series of the same name, we're thrilled to connect with you. People Fundamentals is dedicated to empowering HR professionals such as yourselves with the tools and knowledge to shape your workplace for the better. We believe in your ability to make an organizational impact by addressing the opportunities and issues you face today. At the center of this challenge is the pace of change. The world around us is changing at breakneck speed. Workplace disruptions are around us, such as generative AI, hybrid and remote work, hiring booms, workforce contractions, and all of this makes the unprecedented really feel like the new normal. And amidst this whirlwind of transformation, human-centric leadership emerges as a guiding principle. Recognizing that developing a culture where employees feel valued and supported leads to increased engagement, motivation, and productivity. Simultaneously, integrating your employee experience, or EX, with customer experience, CX, amplifies loyalty, retention, and business performance. So let's break that down a little bit. From a business perspective, we know that customer retention is critical for every business, as the cost of retaining an existing customer is much lower than the cost to acquire a new one. And as businesses mature, significant portions of their revenue come from contract renewals and expansion. Your customers are making those renewal decisions based on the value they get from your product and the experience they have working with your customer success and support teams. That means your CSMs and your account managers are the face of your company, and supporting them in their well-being has never been more critical to business outcomes. In short, you can't have a great customer experience without a great employee experience, and vice versa. That's why today's webinar is about strategic alignment between EX and CX, fueled by continuous feedback and data-driven insights to ensure that everyone contributes and benefits from the business success. So I'm thrilled today to announce our speaker, Jeannie Walters, CCXP. Jeannie is not just an award-winning customer experience expert, but a true trailblazer in transforming reactive customer service into proactive customer experience. With a distinguished background as the founder of Experience Investigators, Jeannie has lent her expertise to an impressive array of Fortune 500 companies, including Orange Theory Fitness, where I go, SAP, Comcast, and JP Morgan Chase. Today, Jeannie will walk us through a journey that bridges the gap between HR strategies and customer satisfaction. We'll explore innovative approaches to employee engagement that directly contribute to customer experience and improving it. Expect to uncover actionable insights on fostering a culture of empowerment and recognition, and how these elements are instrumental in elevating both employee and customer satisfaction. So let's give a warm virtual welcome to Jeannie Walters.
Hi, Ashley.
Hello. It's so nice to have you on our talk today. Jeannie,
so
before we dive in, we usually kick things off with a little bit of an icebreaker so the audience can get to know you. I'm curious, Jeannie, can you share a fun fact that we wouldn't know about you just by looking at your LinkedIn profile?
Well, on my LinkedIn profile, it doesn't really talk about how I really enjoy hip hop. I like a lot of different types of music, but I think people are usually surprised to find out that I like to have hip hop playing in my office. I've gone to concerts. It's like my alter ego sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Well, Jeannie, have you heard Beyonce's newest song release, Texas?
Oh my goodness. Have I heard it and replayed it and can't stop singing it? I don't know what it is about that song, but I have been totally into it. So I mean, she can do anything, really. She
She
can,
really can.
yeah.
She is amazing. I love that song too. It's such a bop. Well, I'm so excited to have you here today, and I'm really excited to listen to what you have to say.
Thank you. Yes, it's so good to be here with everybody. What a thrill to have folks from all over the world who are interested in this subject, which I really believe is kind of the key to unlocking success across the employee experience, the customer experience, and ultimately get better business results for all of you. So, you heard about me, so we're not going to spend too much time here, but before we get started, we have a quick poll. I would love to run that and see what you all think, just to get a sense of where you are. So can we run that poll? There we go. The question, would every employee understand their role in delivering the customer experience at your organization? So far it looks like the no's are leading, and I would think that that is pretty consistent. Many of you express that maybe there isn't that alignment that we want between really sharing with everybody to understand that their role, whether they're customer facing or not, has an impact on delivering the customer experience. And that's why I'm so excited about this topic today. When we talk about alignment between employee experience and customer experience, it usually means a lot more than we might be thinking. So let's get right into it. For those of you I don't know, my name is Jeannie Walters. I am the CEO and founder of Experience Investigators. I'm so happy to be here today. And I have always been fascinated by how we deliver customer experiences and how to empower employees to do that. So I know many of you are HR leaders, people leaders, and I just so appreciate you being here today because it shows me your commitment to not just your customers, but also the employees within your organization. So when we talk about customer experience in general, a lot of times people say, well, we want to deliver great customer experiences, or we want to elevate every interaction with the customer. And that sounds wonderful, but we have to remember that it's not just about the things, it's about the people. And when we are looking for, how do we actually connect these dots between employees and customers, we really have to think about how can we elevate and empower the people not just serving our customers on the front lines, but those who are in the background, who maybe are providing things for those customers who are on the front lines. So I'm going to throw something at you now. So when I put this up, I'm curious, what are you seeing? How are you feeling? What comes to mind? All right, I'm seeing confusing. I'm seeing wrong, incorrect, makes me uncomfortable. Yes, all of those things are true. And that's because when I show you this, you understand that there's something not quite right here. These are the wrong colors. This is labeled incorrectly. So all sorts of things are going on where your brain starts saying, whoa, what's happening here? And it makes us uncomfortable. That is called cognitive dissonance. This is where we have a deeply held belief and somebody holds up something that looks like a fact, and our brain starts saying, no way, time out, this is not working for me. It's a physiological response. It actually can make us feel angry, hungry, embarrassed, all of these things because our body is responding to that brain signal of this is wrong. So why am I bringing this up now? Well, it's because when we are on the inside of an organization, we can work really hard to understand our customers and their true journey. But at the end of the day, we really can only see things from our perspective. And when we work on improving processes, when we work really hard on communications and training for people, we react when somebody from the outside says, this isn't working. Maybe you get a complaint. You hear from a customer that, you know what? That person that I interacted with was pretty rude. And you think, well, that can't be the case. That was Sally. Sally is amazing. I have lunch with Sally. She's been to my wedding. When we know somebody and we know the work that's put into it, it's really hard to accept that feedback from the outside that tells us this might not be working exactly the way we thought it was. We need to embrace that feeling of cognitive dissonance and understand what it is so that we can really recognize it to move forward. So as we go through today, I encourage you to just be aware of that because you might have some of that. When we talk about how to make that alignment between employee experience and customer experience, you might have those moments where your inner cynic pops up and says, well, that's not right. Just recognize that for what it is and understand that we can only see things from our perspective. What we want to do today is talk about some of the best practices and tools that empower us to think differently about this, to make sure that we try our best to understand the customers and the employees that serve them. So first of all, let's talk about what customer experience is. The bottom line is customer experience happens whether we talk about it or not. Customer experience is going to happen. If you have customers, they are having an experience. What we want to do inside the organization is lead by intentionally designing proactive customer experiences. That means we not only have to understand and listen to our customers, but we have to look within the organization. What are the processes that are happening that actually maybe have an impact, negative or positive, on the customer experience? How do we empower our employees to give us feedback when they see things that aren't working? And what does that really mean about how we communicate, how we set goals, how we actually really operate as an organization? It's not something extra. It's about how we show up and how we do business every day. Now, when we talk about employee experience, a lot of those things are still true. We might think we understand what's happening to and with an employee in another part of the organization. But really, we have to look for best practices, understand our own limitations, use the tools that we have to empower us to understand other employees throughout. But there is the number one thing that contributes to customer experience. It is your employees. Your employees have everything to do with the customer experience. So if there is a misalignment there, if we say that we make promises to customers around being super speedy in responding to them, but we don't show up for one another that way, we feel misaligned. And when we feel misaligned with the values that are talked about versus the values that are acted upon, that can actually create that icky feeling as well. And that's what drives people out of our workplace. So if we want to be a workplace of choice, if we want to provide an employee experience that works for everybody, we have to connect it to the customer experience and the promises that we've made every day. But the trick here is that we're talking about customers. And so that means we're talking about all our customers. We have to be consistent in our delivery. We have to make sure that we're living up to those promises. And at the same time, every single customer is unique and special and have different expectations. So we have to think about this in an individual way as well. Personalized experiences, both for customers and employees, are becoming more and more important to the individuals that we serve. I want to give you an example, though, of something from my life that really highlights how important it is to live your values within the employee experience for the customer experience. Now, this is my local pharmacy in Oak Park, Illinois. It's an independent pharmacy. It's small. There's no parking lot. And when I go in there, I cannot do certain things. I can't multitask. I can't get my grocery shopping done. I can't do any of that. I go in there for my prescriptions. Now, if you are looking for some old-time candy like Necco wafers, they have a nice little selection, but that's about it. So why do we keep going to this small local pharmacy when we have CVS and Target and Walgreens all within a few miles of each other? Well, a few years ago, I, like many of you probably, have a family member, one of my sons, who has a tree nut allergy. That means we have to carry Benadryl and we have to carry the EpiPen. We have to make sure that he's safe by just having those things available. Now, when he was younger, this meant that we had to have an EpiPen upstairs, an EpiPen downstairs, one in the school backpack, one in the soccer backpack, one with the babysitter, one with the carpool. So you end up with this whole selection of EpiPens. And I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, the price skyrocketed. It went from about $60 to $90 for us with insurance to $1,800 plus. So when we needed our 4 or 5, and they expire every year, so you have to go through this process every year. When that happened, we knew that, this is going to be terrible cost-wise, but what are you going to do? This is a life-saving device. So we put in our prescription at Sears Pharmacy, and I received a call from them, from one of their pharmacists saying, you know what? This is ridiculous. We know it's ridiculous. So we found out that CVS has a special program right now. I'm going to email you the coupon for that program and transfer this prescription over to them because you'll be able to save a lot more money that way. Now think about the impact that had on their business. I'm sure they would have appreciated the profit that they made from that. But instead of making that short-term decision, they lived their values as a local provider for the community. They built trust with us. And that pharmacist, I'm sure, either felt empowered to make that call or got the go-ahead to make that call because it was the right thing to do for who they were. Now, you can believe that we are still very loyal to this pharmacy, even though that one transaction we took elsewhere. This is about being who you are no matter what for your customers and your employees. And so I want you to think about that within your organizations. Are there places where maybe you're not showing up for one another in your organization? Your employee experience isn't reflecting the values that you promise in your customer experience. If you can identify those places, you can then work towards correcting that and creating that alignment that is so important. So first of all, what is customer experience? Are we actually talking about the same thing? Sometimes when I talk to different groups, they say, oh yeah, customer service is so important. And customer service is a piece of the customer experience. But really, this is about what are our customers expecting, what are we delivering, and where are the gaps? So I like to use a formula. Customer experience is really about expectations and the perception. You have certain expectations as a customer, and if those aren't lived up to when you are actually experiencing something, that leads to disappointment. When they are delivered exceptionally well, that leads to that delight that we want for all customers. So it's really about my perception as a customer minus the expectation. If you walk into a Nordstrom, you might hear somebody playing the grand piano. You expect a certain level of service. But if you walk into a Walmart, you're expecting a certain level of service, but you certainly aren't expecting somebody there playing the grand piano or offering you things while you shop. Now, they sell similar products, but the expectations are different because we understand the promise that they've made us. And of course, this is all multiplied by emotion. And what that means is that we have to keep in mind that we have emotions that we're bringing to the table. Our customers have emotions. Our employees have emotions. And guess what? We are more emotional than we are logical. We will actually, as human beings, rationalize things after we have the emotional decision. We make a lot of our decisions on emotion, and the younger generations coming in, they make even more decisions based on that. They trust their emotions more as a guide. So we have to be aware of that as we're creating all of these journeys and experiences. And so, of course, we have to be really careful about just being reactive. If we're being reactive, what that tells us is that we have a misalignment between the promise that we've made and how we deliver it. What we want to do is be proactive and be aligned about who are we to our customers? Who are we to one another? How can we make sure that that all lines up? So when we talk about proactive, positive customer experiences, this is a benefit for the organization because every organization out there wants higher revenue, lower expenses. Every other goal fits into that somehow. So when we're talking about proactive customer experiences, we can actually prevent the service issues that create so much expense in the first place. proactive customer service is desperately needed to meet customer demands, but just 13% of 6,000 customers reported receiving proactive customer service. I bet you can relate to this. The description of the pharmacy that I gave you, that was proactive. They saw something that could be a problem for me. They reached out, they took it upon themselves, and they knew exactly who they were and what their values were and what the promise was that they made to me as a customer. And they were able to live up to that by being proactive. And of course, we can talk about just make sure everybody's aligned, just make sure you have these values, but we also have to make sure that they have the right tools, the right technology, the right support, the right empowerment to actually deliver this. So this is about alignment and acumen. And what I see a lot is that people say things like this. They say our goal is to be customer centric. So everybody in the organization, be customer centric. I actually asked a leader about this in a meeting, and I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he went up to the whiteboard and proudly drew this. And this is where we land a lot of the times. It's vague. It's words. We don't really go into what does this mean for every employee in your organization? How can we make sure that we are talking about the same thing, that we understand the promise that we've made, and that we understand what this will do for our organization overall? We have to make sure that we're treating this like it's part of everyone's role. This is not in addition. This is not just for your customer success team or your customer support or your frontline workers. Every single person in your organization delivers on the customer experience. And if they don't believe that, then you have a bigger problem. And so make sure as you're talking about employee experience that you're also incorporating how that every single employee has an impact on the customer's experience. So when we talk about these things, how do we look to the future? What will this do for our organization? Well, the organizations that do this really well, they actually innovate around experience. Think about the last several disruptors of the last decade plus. They've all been experience-based. When we talk about Airbnb, when we talk about Uber, even Amazon, we're talking about organizations that did not create different products. They created a better experience for customers. Customers are demanding this. And so when we are focused on our employee experience, we have to empower them to look for ways to really innovate around this. Now, one of my favorite examples is Carvana. For those of you who don't know Carvana, they have what they call car vending machines. You may have seen those. They also were one of the first organizations that really thought about buying and selling cars differently. Instead of going to a dealer, instead of those things, you could do everything digitally. They will show up at your house, take your old car. You can buy a car online. They will deliver it to you. Very forward thinking. And one of the things that they said about their values, their guiding values, is called zagging forward. It means we don't just innovate to be different, we innovate to be better. And so this really tells us how embedded in their employee experience the thought around customer experience is. And the fact that it's one of their values means that they're empowering every single employee to have a way to think about this and have actions to take if they see an opportunity. If we are asking our employees to just execute and not inviting that input back, then we are missing opportunities like this to really innovate and get ahead. Now, I want you to think about any relationship in your life. It actually takes 12 positive experiences to overcome one negative one in any relationship you have. Now, think about this. You probably have those friends that maybe cancel plans one too many times, and after a while you decide it's not worth it to even make those plans. That's because there's not enough in that emotional bank, that relationship that we have with one another. So when they need to make a withdrawal, there's not enough there. We need to make sure that we are actively investing in positive experiences in order to overcome those negative ones, because negative things will happen in both the customer journey and the employee journey. So we need to be very proactive about creating positive moments throughout that journey. But here's the kicker here. The elite brands, the ones we think of who are so exceptional at this, the Disneys and the Amazons in some ways, one of the things that they do differently is they actually provide 22 emotionally positive experiences for each negative one. That means they are investing in creating positive moments. So I encourage you to think about not just your customer journey, but your employee journey this way too. Are we celebrating in those moments of celebration with them? Are we recognizing them? Are we listening to them and empowering them to have a place to share good feedback or feedback that we need to work on as an organization? Now, you'll notice here that even the ones who aren't so good at this have a positive ratio of 3-1. That means we have to really overly invest in creating positive moments just to overcome those negative things that will happen. So when we talk about talent professionals specifically, 96% of talent professionals say employee experience is becoming more important. But I want to caution you here because this can become that whiteboard drawing of, well, we're just going to think about employees. We need to get real about what that means. And that means we have to understand what it's like to be an employee. What is it like to be hired as a candidate? What is it like to have that first year in an organization? What is it like 5 years in? What is it like to get a promotion? We have to think through all those different scenarios so that we can make sure that we truly understand what's happening and we don't get caught in our own processes. We use a technique called employee journey mapping, where we really look at the employee journey. One of the very simple things that came out of this in an example is working with an organization that was really looking at what's it like to be a part-time staff member. They had a huge part-time workforce. Well, they went through all these surveys and they found all this information, and they still felt like there was this rift between the part-time workers and the full-time. So we went in there and did a journey mapping session with the part-time workers. And one of the most basic things that they shared was everybody hated parking. Nobody knew where to park. They got parking tickets. It was horrible. There weren't good transportation options, et cetera, et cetera. 2-1, they all said they complained about this. They all said that they told their supervisors. And the attitude was basically like, nah, what are you going to do? We can't do much about this. But when I saw what they had documented through those surveys, that was nowhere in the surveys. So what that tells me is there was misalignment on even how they were gathering the information to solve this. So giving people opportunities to share their real experiences can go so far in helping them invest and helping them feel like they are listened to and valued as part of the employee experience. And this is about so much more than customer-facing employees. We have to understand how every single person contributes to the customer experience. Now, when we see organizations that have poor customer experiences, I can almost guarantee they have employees who are disengaged, don't feel heard, don't feel valued, and don't really know what to do when they have issues. They feel like they're just cogs in the wheel. The more that we can engage employees in meaningful ideas, making sure that we have that alignment in the values, the better off our customer experience will be. And guess what? That means a better employee experience. People want to work at places where people are happy. If they're getting complaints all day, it's a really hard place to work. That takes a toll on people. Empathy is a finite resource, and we have to remember that when we're asking our employees to show up and kind of take the complaints day in and day out with no way to really empower them to make change, to think innovatively, to really look to the future of how to create better customer experiences. Because when we get right down to it, when we improve the employee experience, it improves the customer experience and vice versa. Engaged employees see 20% higher sales and 21% higher profitability. So if you are thinking to yourself, well, this all sounds great, but how do we get that buy-in we need to do what we need to do? This is how. You start looking at what can this do for our organizational success? How can we raise that revenue or lower those expenses? If you can connect the dots to that, then you are much more likely to get the investment in the resources that you need, in the time that you need, in the tools that you need. Magical experiences that we all have, it is not something that is magical. The organizations that do this well, they have a mission around this. Everybody in the organization understands it, feels connected, empowered, and engaged around it. That's because I talk about customer experience as three things. It's a mindset, it's a strategy, and it's a discipline within your organization. So customer experience as a mindset is great. We all kind of get that concept. But if we don't turn it into something, then we're kind of doing that thing where we're saying, everybody just focus on customers. It's going to be great. We want to create a CX mission statement. This is a North Star. This is something that you're going towards every single day. This is about who your organization is and how you show up. It's about the experience for every customer every time. Now, this is where it can differ from your organizational mission statement. Some organizational mission statements do this really well. A lot of them don't. So I'm going to give you an example, but just know that I would look at your organizational statement and see if it fits. If it doesn't, you're not alone. Create your own customer experience mission statement. And we have some resources for you on that too. So this is an example of REI. REI is an outdoor equipment and clothing retailer, and they are so committed to thinking beyond just what their products are. When we talk about what we do for customers, it really isn't about our products or services. It's about what they do with those products and services. So one of the things that they have in their corporate mission statement is that they believe a life outdoors is a life well lived. And I love this because it's woven into almost everything that they do. Now, several years ago, they started thinking about how if that's the case, then what did this mean for keeping employees in stores on Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving in the United States? Now, it's the biggest retail retail day of the year for all retailers. So, of course, they had sales, they had all the traditional stuff. But they started realizing this was not living their values. This was not giving their employees the respect they deserve because this is supposed to be a long weekend. So this is when you should be getting outside. So after trying it for a year, they decided that they were going to continue to close their stores on Black Friday to allow their employees to go live a life well lived outdoors. And they started a campaign called Opt Outside. Now, people thought they were crazy doing this. All the analysts said this is ridiculous. They're never going to make their numbers. But their customers respected the alignment. And so their customers not only show up digitally and elsewhere, but throughout the year in a bigger way. They saw their numbers go up. They realized that this is about who they are. And then they translated this inside the organization, committed to being better. Better is a journey, not a destination. So when they talk about who they are inside their organization, they talk about, lifelong learning and learning in general as part of who they are, the path of learning. It's just a great example of tying together the mindset, who they are, both to their customers and to their employees. And then, of course, we're all in business. We need things to happen. Customer experience is a strategy. This means we have to make sure that we are doing this not just to be nice to customers, but because it makes our organization better. If we have employees who are dedicated to this, they feel better about their role. They feel like they're doing more meaningful work. We start seeing results. We start seeing more revenue, fewer expenses, because we're intentional about the customer experience we're delivering. So this is really where we get into understanding our vision and our values and having that alignment. If we are only dependent on our customer-facing teams, then we are missing opportunities to really get everybody involved in this meaningful work. So strategy works when teams work. Customer experience teams that collaborate cross-functionally are 27% more likely to have a high return on investment. Now, what this means is we have to make sure that we are not an island when we are talking about customer experience. And you as HR and people leaders, you have so much influence over this. Understanding that if we have a CX mission statement, we can use that in our job postings. We can use that in employee reviews. We can really recognize our employees who are delivering on that mission. And then when it comes to strategy, we can tie our goals to our organizational goals, our revenue goals, our leadership goals, our professional development goals, and make sure that that is all living up to the customer experience mission statement as well. And that alignment between vision and values, that is so, so important. At the end of the day, though, we all have jobs to do, right? So customer experience is a business discipline. This is what are we trying to do every day and who should be involved. Now, ideally, we have a cross-functional team. We have leaders from across the organization who are helping us listen to customers, gain those insights from customers, and then turn that into real action. But those aren't always the same people or teams. So what we need to do is get very clear and define who's doing what, when, and why. And so we use something called the CX Charter, and this is where we outline the agreements of what we're trying to do here. We centralize the idea of this customer experience strategy, but we bring in the teams and the leaders that we need in order to deliver on that. We can collect feedback all day long, but if there's a problem on the digital side of things for the customer, then we have to get the digital team involved. If it's actually a process inside our organization that is preventing the customer experience from being as seamless as possible, we might need to bring in operations folks and process development people. So we really want to look at what is actually happening, how can we create this in a better way and invite the right leaders at the table. But this only works if they understand that customer experience is a priority and that the employee experience is aligned with the customer experience. So another example here, IKEA has a great vision that they've really been focused on in the last few years. Now, I'm curious how many of you have tried to put together IKEA furniture, right? It's a lot. And the trick here is many of us have put together the furniture, and then if you've ever tried to take it apart, it's really, really something. So IKEA, their vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. You'll see there it does not talk about furniture. It doesn't talk about their Allen wrenches. It doesn't talk about Swedish meatballs. This is about what do their products, what do their services, what does their experience do for the people that they're serving? Well, then they started becoming really dedicated to this idea of this is who we are and this is what we're trying to do for the future. So they are very transparent in all of this. You can find this online. They really share all of their goals this way. And the one I want you to focus on here is circular and climate positive. They made different decisions based on suppliers that they had, based on how easy it is to take apart their furniture, because they want to create ways that people can maybe resell it or carry it to their next destination or all these different things. They're using more recyclable things. So they're being very open and honest about this is the commitment we've made. This is how we're doing it. And their employees are really responding to that as well. Their employees, their suppliers, their partners. They talk about create a positive social impact for everyone across the IKEA value chain. So using these commitments and using that mission, that's how they evaluate how are we doing. And they make sure that it's not just about how people are feeling, but the real results that they need as well. And so this is from an employee review, and they talk about it's a great positive company to work for, and they really value and care for their employees. And I think this is something that we all aim for, right? We all want our employees to feel valued, to feel like they have a voice, all of those things. So when you go to your Glassdoor reviews, I would encourage you to think about, are they talking about their meaningful impact on our overall goals, on serving customers in the right way, on living that customer experience mission? Because that is really what we ultimately want for the employee experience. And guess what? This works. They have had tremendous results as an organization, as a business. $44.6 billion. That's a lot. And one of the advantages that they and analysts have cited is that they really understand their customers. And by doing so, they have that connection with their employees, like we saw in that review as well. So what am I asking you to do here? Number one, connect with your mission. Make sure that you understand if you don't have a great corporate mission, because some of you don't, if it says things about shareholders or stakeholders or being best in class, that's not really about your customers. So take a moment craft a customer experience mission statement if you need it. It will help guide everything else, and it gives you a tool to communicate with your employees and to create an employee experience that also aligns with that mission. We also want to discuss outcomes, not magic. We do not want to talk about big ideas without really defining what that means about who we are, what we're doing in our organization, what the promises that we've made our customers, and what our customers are expecting. That means we have to talk about those business results of, will this help us increase revenue or achieve our organizational goals? Will it help us decrease expenses? Will it help us improve the employee experience? Will it help us get that feedback that we need in order to decide on priorities? And that comes to this last piece about align overall priorities. It can feel like every single thing is a priority in customer experience and employee experience. I know I'm getting some head nods here. Yes, because we are really in this role where we're listening all the time. And when we're listening all the time, we're going to have so much input. And it can sound like everything is top priority. But if you have that mission statement, if you understand what success looks like, and you have that alignment in your values, you can start aligning your priorities according to that. It can make everything else easier moving forward. There is always so much to learn here, but what we can't do is relegate the education about or for our customers to just those employees who have the right roles, who are the customer facing or the trainers, or those of you out there who are learning and development. Now, when we talk about customer experience being a mindset strategy and business discipline, I want to share with you what that could look like, just talking about 3 touch points in the employee experience. So when we talk about 3 touch points, these are just 3. There are many more. First impressions, listening, and working through change. Let's just think about that. So first impressions, the candidate experience. I feel like this is overlooked and neglected in so many ways in so many organizations, and it's such an incredible opportunity. When we are inviting someone to apply for our organization, when we are saying we want to be a great place to work, we want to consider the first part of the employee experience in a similar way to the first stages of the customer journey. So how are we showing up for them? Are we meeting our promises? Are we inviting them into the process in the right way? And how are we sharing where we want to go? If you can share your customer experience mission statement in your job postings, if you can share as part of the interview process, if you can paint the picture that this isn't something that we just talk about, this is something that we live and we have objective ways to measure success and all of those things, you will attract the people who say, yes, that's something that I really want to do. We also want to set those customer-centric expectations from the first interview. So prompt them, consider a customer in the decision that they make. How would they do that? How would they dedicate themselves to ongoing customer experience learning? What is the impact that they will have on the customer, even if indirect? So if you're hiring somebody who isn't customer facing, how can you paint that picture of the work you do by providing services within our organization helps us deliver the customer experience that we promised to the customers that we serve? And then really thinking about onboarding programs for all that include customer experience training. Every employee should feel empowered to focus on the customer experience. So we want to train on the basics, like what is this and why does it matter and why are we talking about it? And then what actions are taken to collaborate and connect with our customers? How do we gather feedback? How do we understand those insights? And how do we take action? Because otherwise what happens is we have that cycle of feedback, but the teams that we're going to saying, we need your help on improving this, they've never heard about this feedback. They don't know it's happening. They don't understand that it's a priority. So we want to make sure that everybody understands this isn't something in addition to our job. This is who we are and how we show up. And then get specific. What is your role, employee, in the larger CX picture? Let's talk about that. Let's understand the impact that you have in your role. And then, of course, we want to listen to employee feedback. I know many of you probably have ENPS surveys, maybe annual employee engagement surveys, things like that. That's all great. We want to make sure we're doing more than just gathering that feedback. The complaint we hear a lot about employee experience is, yes, they survey every year and then we have a big meeting about it and then nothing changes. And so what I want you to do is embrace employee feedback just like we embrace customer feedback. That means specific feedback on ways they believe their work helps that customer experience mission. Get them to connect those dots. Think about that. What they believe could make the customer experience better, and how to, in the words of Carvana, zag forward. We want to make sure that they feel invited to share their opinions, to raise their hand and say, this isn't working for the customers the way we think it will, or I see a better way. And then broad, big ideas like, if you had a magic wand, how would you improve the customer experience? You will get some great feedback. You will get some wonderful ideas. And a lot of the times they will say, I've just never been asked. We want to make sure that every employee in our organization feels like they're not only invited to share, but we are encouraging them to look for these ideas, to innovate, to see the big picture, so that they understand not just their role today, but also where the organization is going and how they can go with it in the future. And then employee journey mapping. This is something that we talked about. Customer journey mapping is a best practice in customer experience because it works. It's something that can be so powerful. And I always like to say it's a verb, not a noun. It's really not about the end map. It's about the process of mapping that gets everybody on board. You engage in different ways. You hear from people. They start understanding, what is this really like for people? And so there are a lot of times feelings of misalignment. By getting everybody in the room, by walking through this, you can start to feel that a little bit, but also correct it. We also want to look for those points of friction in the employee experience. Now, I mentioned the thing about parking in the one journey mapping that we've done recently. There are so many moments like that sometimes you can fix it. Sometimes it's things like, I didn't know where to go on my first day to get my ID. And if you hear that enough, you'll start realizing something's not working. Yes, we email the instructions. Something's not working here. Let's figure out what that is to make it a warmer welcome when somebody starts with our organization. We want to look for meaningful moments along their journey, not the process that we think is happening, but their journey. How can we increase the number of positive moments? We want to be proactive, remember, about creating those positive moments, creating the emotions that we want to elicit, not just letting it happen. And then, of course, we have to walk and work through change. This is because when we are experiencing these points of friction and making improvements, that sometimes can mean that people are really unsettled because change is hard. And so we want to really promote the idea of being a flexible, adaptable, agile organization. And then we have to walk the talk. We have to make sure that we're staying ahead of trends, that we are challenging the status quo, that we are embracing that when we get that challenge in the employee experience. And we're responding to organizational needs through a continuous cycle of learning, planning, and acting. The acting is the most important and often overlooked piece. So if your folks don't feel empowered, then it's really hard to act on change. So if you're feeling resistance, I would go back and think about, how can we help them feel connected to that mission? How can we help them understand how these goals not just serve customers or employees, but the overall organizational goals, and how that will be a win-win for everybody? Now, what if we don't have this alignment? Well, I'm going to share a little bit about when I was flying into the Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. Some of you may have experienced that airport. It's very big. It's busy all the time. And I went to get my rental car, and it was a mess. I stood in line for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. And finally made it up to the desk. And the person there said, "Oh, sure. Okay, we've got your reservation." Printed everything off on that dot matrix printer from the 90s that they all have. And then he handed it to me and said, "You're in row triple Z 486. I was about as far as I could be. And of course, when I walked all the way there, guess what was there? No car. No car at all. So, have to trek back, stand in line again, get up there. And I said, "Hey, there was no car." And I was already pretty frustrated by this point. There were no apologies. You could tell this was just something that happened. They didn't really think about the customer experience. So then they said, okay, we've got a car for you. Here it is. Just as far. I make it all the way across the parking lot. There's actually a car. And I open up the driver's door, and this was on the seat. Now, of course, this was not meant for me. This was meant for the car. But you can guarantee I saw that and just thought, yeah, I feel like a low priority as your customer. Now, I wasn't supposed to see this, but I did. And that's something that happens no matter what we do. So by aligning your values and your vision and your ideals around experience, then you will make sure that no matter who sees what, you're living up to the promise that you've made. And that's where we get that real alignment and create meaningful experiences for both employees and customers. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We have a couple resources for you. If you're interested in employee journey mapping, you can check that out at bit.ly/EJM template. That's for employee journey mapping. And then we also have a lot of resources at Experience Investigators Learning Center. Articles, videos, guides, workbooks, you name it. We have a lot there. And then we also have a podcast where I answer your questions. So if you have more questions for me, check out the Experience Action podcast, and you can leave me a voicemail at askjeannie.vip, and I answer one question a week on that podcast. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you to BetterWorks for having me. And now I can't wait to hear your questions and get into this great discussion I'm sure we're about to have.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Jeannie. That was such a wonderful presentation. And that last takeaway with the car, we've all been there where we feel as though we're low priority, or there are moments where we don't feel like we're getting the best customer service, and those takeaways definitely are lasting for us. We have seen a lot of great questions come through, so I want to make sure that we're able to get to a couple of them. What metrics or KPIs do you recommend for proactive customer service? How does a business get started with it?
Great question. Great question. So here's what I see. I typically see KPIs in customer experience as feedback metrics a lot of the time. So you might have goals around net promoter score, for instance, or customer satisfaction rate. Those are measurements towards something else. So I always think about, what will it do if we have happier customers? Well, we might have higher retention rates. We might have higher renewal rates. What would a 1% retention rate do? You know, that can be millions of dollars based on your organization. What would a bump in employee retention do? That could be millions of dollars for your organization as well. So I always look at, what would it start with your organizational goals? What are you actually trying to do? Every organization in the world has two goals: higher revenue, lower expenses. So if you can tie your goals to those, that's where you start. And then you start predicting, you start looking at patterns and saying, okay, if we get a higher net promoter score, that will mean that we have happier customers. Maybe you have a customer referral program, and maybe you look at that and say, okay, how can we connect the dots to, if we get more referred customers, what would that mean in dollars and cents to our organization? If we could prevent those service issues from ever going to customer service, how could that lower expenses? So always start with that organizational value and then figure out, what are the measurements that support that, not the other way around.
Incredible. Brooke, we hope that answered your question. Thank you so much, Jeannie. I'm going to pull one more question up here from Amy. How do you make the link between EX and CX clear to make for more investment in EX in the process of EX?
Another great question. So this is where really making sure you have alignment over both, what are you trying to do as an organization, but then the data that you might already be collecting. So look at data points like, not only from your employee engagement surveys, if you have those, but also things like, how long does it take to hire somebody? What happens when we have people who aren't engaged? And then look at your customer experience metrics and see where those things line up, because often they line up pretty perfectly. We just never take the time to look at them together. So if you have employees who are reporting that they are disengaged, that they would not refer somebody to work at your organization, that's a great question if you're not already asking it. If you look at those numbers and then you look over at the customer experience and customers are basically saying the same thing, that's where you start making that case again for the organizational value. You say, okay, we know that our employees are not engaged enough to deliver great customer experiences. We know that because we're not delivering those great customer experiences, we're losing customers. We are spending way too much on sales and acquisition instead of keeping customers for the long term. You can make your business case for that. I think the challenge that I see in both employee experience and customer experience is we don't always speak like business people. We speak like people who are, very invested in the idea of these things because I believe in them for certain, but our leaders need to see the value. And so we need to make a business case.
Incredible. We're going to do one more rapid fire question because I really like this one. Jeannie,
Yeah.
what is the best way to link ROI to people engagement budget?
I think it's that same thread, right? Like we have to make sure that we are looking at what does this actually mean for the organization? What would keeping employees, a year longer, what would that actually mean for your ROI? That would mean huge things, right? What could we do with innovation if we had people who stayed longer? That's where we have to really look at what is that connection between employee engagement, customer experience, and overall business results.
Incredible. Well, I'm glad we were able to get to a couple of questions. Thank you all so much for your engagement. Thank you, Jeannie, for an incredible presentation. We really enjoyed all of your takeaways. This webinar will be available on demand. So if you would love to watch this a couple of times to make sure that you are able to consume all of the incredible takeaways that Jeannie provided, please feel free to do so.
Thank you so much.